Adrienne Herbert joins us on the Braincare Podcast this week to share her perspectives on how to live your best, most productive life with what she calls the Power Hour. The wellness influencer turned podcaster is also now a celebrated author, and her tips on how to get the most out of your day and life with small changes is exactly why we're here to ask her all about how she makes the most of her brain and body and general energy so that you can too. So firstly, Adrienne, thank you for joining us. How are you?
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I am very well, thank you.
Awesome. Okay, in your own words, who are you? I mean, I've done a little intro to you, but no one tells their story better than the guests themselves.
Gosh, yes. Who am I? I think like many people now, I do so many different things, and I'm, multi-hyphenate, and I have a multifaceted digital entrepreneurial kind of portfolio career. So what does that actually look like? It means I have a concept, as you say, the Power Hour. I have been living and breathing and talking about this for 5 years. Feels like more. Before it was, doing events and speaking to people and corporate events, etc. I live and breathe the Power Hour myself every day. So definitely come on to talk about that. I have the podcast, as you mentioned. I've written a book about the concept, but I've also worked in the fitness and wellness industry for almost a decade. And I'm also the director of innovation and performance at the UK's leading fitness app, Fit. So a lot of things. I'm also a mother to a 9-year-old son, homeschooling in lockdown. So when you ask me, what do you do? What's it all about? It's often hard to kind of distill it into one thing, but the thread that ties it all together is that I am a professional encourager. I want to help people, motivate them, and encourage them to not only focus on their goals, reclaim their time, unlock their potential, achieve whatever they want to achieve, but actually practical application. What are the tools? What are the habits? What's the blueprint for high performance, and how can we all access it? We're not all Olympic athletes. We're not all business founders. We're not all, psychologists or scientists, but I do believe we can all apply small principles to our lives to really get the best out of them.
Love that. And I also love your reference to being a multi-hyphenate. It's fascinating because it suddenly helped me find like an identity as well. Much like you, I've got lots of different things, run 3 different companies. They do very different things in their own right. And people like to have one identity for people and say you're the person that does that thing. I'm actually really curious about just having a conversation with you about identity as well. Have you found that to be like a personal struggle, and like how you have learned to define yourself and how that has an impact on your personal self-worth and mental health?
Yeah, a couple of things actually I was thinking as you were describing that. One is, other people's perception of us and being able to put us in a box. So people like to, exactly say, what do you do? Because then they can put in a box in their mind, well, if you do that, you must be this kind of person. If you are a doctor, you must be an academic, you must be trustworthy, you must be diligent. They can assign characteristics and traits to you that typically they would associate with that profession or with that personality type. I think people are starting to accept more that actually it's not a jack of all trades, master of none. I think that old rhetoric is changing, and I think the idea that the pick and stick approach is actually quite old school. Just pick one thing, become niche, become an expert, and that's how you do that, is just by pick and stick one area, stay in your lane. I think that's gone. But I think when it comes to defining yourself, what you do doesn't necessarily define who you are, but if you can integrate the two and do something that is purpose-led and you can monetize that, then that blend, I guess, is what a lot of people are trying to achieve.
Yeah, very selfishly, I'm vibing a lot of this conversation because it's resonating so much. And when I started Heights, I had no expertise here whatsoever, and that was what I kept telling people was literally the selling point, was my lack of understanding of any of the space to do with nutrition and neuroscience. How have you applied that then for yourself? Because I guess at the heart of everything, wellness is like the principle that drives you, right? So it's this idea of like looking after yourself, prevention is the cure, etc. So is that like your sort of core principle, and it drives all the things that you're curious about from there?
Maybe. It's interesting actually hearing you ask that question. I'm challenging myself to think, well, actually, what is it? I think maybe it's a bit of nature and nurture. So it's probably part of, who I am, my personality. I am a curious person. I do ask a lot of questions. Maybe the experiences that I've had in the past. So for example, growing up, I grew up in a single household with a solo parent mother with low income, and one of 4 is an older sibling. And so I took on a lot of responsibility, and I had to learn things, and I had to get on and do them. I had to just figure it out and just get on with it. So again, the nature nurture, maybe it was out of necessity of having to figure things out that I felt that actually gave me a sense of control, a sense of actually I can learn something new, and then I can apply that to something, and therefore, achieve the outcome that I want, as opposed to kind of thinking, well, wait for the opportunity to come to you, or wait for someone to give you the permission to do this, or give you that job. Or I think I always had that, maybe from, as I say, being 12, 13, 14, and thinking, actually, if I want something, I'm going to have to work really, really hard for it. B, I'm going to have to learn how to do it. I'm going to have the confidence to back myself and to have conviction in what I want to achieve. And I think the real key is learning. Actually, I think learning is something that I became a voracious learner, not so much when I was a teenager, but later in life, because I realized that actually it's just all about skill acquisition and application. If you don't know something, as you just described, not knowing is a great place to start. And asking questions doesn't mean that you are you don't know anything, you're a novice, you're a beginner. Asking questions showcases, to me anyway, that your mindset, you have a willingness to learn and to improve and to iterate. The thing that I think is an issue right now is people are being missold this idea that, dream for it, wish for it, don't burn out, self-care. And that is really, really important. But I think what you have to balance it with is, okay, I'm a high performing person. I want to achieve all these things, and I'm not going to do them at the detriment of my health. So if I want to be able to do both, then I do believe there's an element of knowing when to start, when to continue, and when to rest and recover and recoup. And I think balancing the two is definitely a challenge, but I see merit in both.
It's really interesting. Again, hearing you talk, resonating with a lot. I think one of the things that people do misunderstand is the value of asking questions, and there is no such thing as a stupid question. And the attitude around the other way, which is, this smugness around how smart or intelligent people are meant to seem, especially on social media, actually stops people from having the confidence to ask what might be a dumb question to one person, but is just an opportunity to grow to another.
And also, sorry to interrupt you, but I also think asking the question, of course, ask a question, ask more questions. I'm curious. I ask a lot of questions, but also listen. So many people will ask a question and they assume they already know the answer. Or when someone's speaking, I heard this the other day, apparently it's like 6 words into the sentence, depending on what those first 6 words are, people then assume and fill the gaps of the rest of the sentence. And often people who interrupt, they will interject because they think they know what you're going to say. So, I know what she's going to say, they interrupt. So actually, when you ask questions, or if other people are asking questions, listen for a start, really actually listen, don't interrupt, avoid the temptation to interrupt, hold the thought in your head until they've finished speaking. And also, if someone asks you, if you're asked a question and someone interrupts you, have the confidence to say, I haven't finished speaking. Can I give you the full answer?
Spot on. Every single time you have a conversation with someone is an opportunity to stay curious and learn, even if you think you know the thing before. And even some of the best educators in the world, academics who know their material inside out, will be happy to sit and hear someone say the same thing a slightly different way. Okay, Adrienne, I would love to know this idea of work-life balance. And when anyone ever asks me that, it's a very common question entrepreneurs get asked. And I just say, there isn't such a thing in my opinion, there's just life. But I wonder if that is more of a multi-hyphenate attitude, because everything is seeping in all these different places. There isn't just one thing you're doing. So it's hard to just switch off and you're curious at all points, or you think differently. There's a different perspective. I'd love to get yours.
Yes, I think my perspective is probably very similar to yours in the sense of, I think the way the world is, the way we now communicate and connect, and the demands on our time mean that regardless of whether you're a multi-hyphenate, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you work for a company, I think there is an expectation of us to be available. So an expectation that someone can send you a message and that you will read it and reply. All these different ways in which people can contact us. And it's brilliant and great for so many reasons because we can be connected. But I think that is one reason that it's hard for people, if they wish to kind of say, separate, your work and your life. I talk about, if you imagine a red ball of Play-Doh and a blue ball of Play-Doh, and one is the work and one is the life. And then you roll the ball into a marble and then you try and extract one from the other. It's virtually impossible. And that's the way I believe my life is now. It's very blended. This marble of, I enjoy running and I enjoy endurance training. So that's something I'm doing. And I might be listening to a book about biomechanics and running, and I might be interested in that. So I'm listening to that. I might then research that and incorporate some of the research into an article I'm writing or into a book, or interview someone on my podcast, which is my work. So it's all blended together. So yeah, I'm not sure if that completely answers the question, but for me, it's definitely that marble approach.
Yeah, but it's interesting because, you talk a lot about self-care, and the thing that we talk about at Heights is, is brain care, which very similar, right? It all starts at the top. So you look after your most important organ and everything else flows, because we're trying to encourage people to think about wellness with regards to their brain, not just their body. I'd love to know where you see, self-care practices, routines, regimes and stuff, where they align with, how to take care of your brain. And I guess where this is all going is boundaries.
Well, to give a little bit of context, 10 years ago this month, I was newlywed and newly pregnant and had a baby on the way. And my husband at the time was very young, healthy and fit. He is a PE teacher. He was training for a marathon and had never had more than a common cold probably in his life. And one night, out of the blue, out of nowhere, we were talking in bed. We fell asleep, and 30 minutes later, he fell out of bed having a seizure on the floor, and he had a spontaneous brain hemorrhage. So, as you can imagine, that was a life-changing, traumatic event, which actually wasn't just an isolation. When I reflect on it now, the following years were equally, anxiety-inducing and stressful, because we never knew what caused that. Why would someone who's young and healthy one day just have a brain hemorrhage? Why does that happen? The neurologists in the ward in the hospital that took care of him never found a cause and could never give us a reason. So that was something that really, for a long time, I think, kind of plagued me. But then as a result of the brain hemorrhage, he developed epilepsy. And I was 22 years old. I did not know about brain hemorrhages. I didn't know about the functions of the brain and how they're affected by sleep and sleep deprivation or alcohol or diet. And so as a new mother, as a brand newborn baby, I was so anxious and afraid, actually, because I thought, why did this happen? Is it going to happen again? What could we do to prevent it? Is there anything you could do to prevent it? And we looked at everything, from diet to sleep, as I said. And I really, found the things that universally you can't deny. So sleep being one, sleep, and looking at that and saying, what happens to us when we are sleep deprived? The long-term effects of us, trying to survive essentially with very little sleep and being these sleep deprived zombies that just look at screens all day and say to people, you know what, it's fine, work late, drink coffee, get up early. It's not fine. I think this stuff's going to be so much more mainstream. I think it already is in some ways. Like, to me, probably the same for yourself, Dan, all the podcasts I listen to, all the books that I read, I think everybody knows this stuff. But really mainstream, I think it's starting to get out there, whether it's through, doctors that are on Instagram, whether it's through people bringing out books and writing articles in popular magazines and newspapers. I think it's starting to infiltrate everywhere, hopefully, that we need to take care of our brains. We need to take care of our mental health. And just as much as, taking care of our going to the gym or eating vegetables.
Spot on. And you know what? I wish it was more mainstream. Okay. I would love to know, what are your top 3 tips on how to take space and make self-care or brain care a priority in your life?
Yes. Okay. So my first one, of course, is going to be my power hour, which is the first hour of every day. I try to avoid and eliminate distractions. And so, don't go on my phone, things like that. But I also take that hour to do something that I want to do for myself. Often it's running or stretching or reading, but I use the first hour because it's the first, it's the first thing. It's how I'm going to feel first thing in the morning. It's the information that I'm going to see. It's going to go into my brain first thing in the morning. So I start with the power hour. Second tip would be for people to create white space in your schedule, in your diary, in your life. Do you have white space? That is not a gap of time that can be filled with an overflow. So like time to catch up on the work that you haven't done, or time to research more or read, or actual white space where there's nothing. There's nothing in the diary. There's no demands on your time. Albert Einstein, a good example, he would sit apparently for 8 hours in a chair and think. He wasn't reading. He wasn't listening to a podcast. He wasn't writing. He was thinking for 8 hours. It, lowers our blood pressure. It lowers our cortisol levels. We can't get enough. So white space. And then the third one would be get outside all year round, if you can, whether it's 10 minutes, whether it's an hour. I've got a young son, as I said, and we walk to school every single day, seeing it with your eyes, the daylight in your eye, but also what you're breathing in is, it's doing good for the gut microbes, for the brain. So that's my third one, is go outside somewhere muddy, somewhere leafy every single day in every season.